welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today we are concluding the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy with Spider-Man 3. Shocking, I know.
Yay.
But believe it or not, I think this is still more or less the same creative team.
For the most part, again, directed by Sam Raimi, screenplay by Sam Raimi, I guess his brother Ivan Raimi and Alvin Sargent, again based on the Spider-Man comics by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko.
No way.
Who would have thought?
Loosely.
Guess who's in this movie?
Let me see. Toby Maguire.
Yeah.
James Franco.
You'd be right.
Kirsten Dunst. Bryce Dallas Howard. James Cromwell, or whatever his name is. Topher Grace.
Ooh. You're getting a big one.
Thomas Hayden Church.
Yeah. And J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons.
Music this time around by Christopher Young, although the main theme, they still credit Danny Elfman, obviously.
Of course.
Movie was released May 4th of 2007.
On Star Wars Day?
Runtime of 139 minutes on this one. Estimated budget, according to Wikipedia, is between $258 and $350 million. Mm-hmm. It only made $895.
Yeah. I think
which is still the most any of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies made. But.
If I remember correctly, I think it broke Revenge of the Sith opening weekend record when it came out. So there's that.
People were like, the last one was so good.
And
then they watched this.
I remember the marketing campaign for this being really good, though. I was hyped to see it.
I remember.
And when I was a kid, I mean...
When I was a kid, it wasn't bad.
I still enjoyed it.
I enjoyed
liked
it. There were moments that, like you said and I said too, we both thought were like, ooh, a little cringy.
A little cringy, but
did you see this in theaters when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, probably 3 or 4 times.
I saw this. I remember vividly watching this Thursday night.
Oh yeah,
opening night.
I don't know if we did Thursday night or Friday night.
I think my mom and my grandmother took me to go see it that night because I was obsessed with Spider-Man when I was a kid. So.
Oh yeah, I'm sure we saw it either that Thursday or that Friday night. And I think I remember standing in line for it. I mean, that was back, when you still had lines in the theater.
Oh yeah.
I don't really see much of those anymore. but no, just getting right into it. People love to talk down on this movie. But at the beginning, I think that it gets off to a pretty good start. With we're resetting up where everybody's at, and we have the opening intro, and Peter and Mary Jane are like a happy couple, kind of, for a brief period of time.
They're doing good.
Harry's still a little pissy about the whole dead dad thing, and I actually think that they do a really great job in this movie of setting up Thomas Hayden Church's Sandman as a sympathetic villain.
Yep.
I think actually they do a really good job of that. And I really like his line early on in the movie where he's like, "I'm not a bad man. I've just lived a bad life," or whatever he says.
Something like that.
And this whole thing with his, he just needs money for his daughter and all that. I think they actually do a really good job with all this.
I think that this movie would have benefited a lot from focusing mainly on him and having the inclusion of Venom later in the film.
Yeah. Which my understanding that was forced by Sony.
Definitely forced by Sony. I know Sam Raimi has, that's the whole story behind this movie. The reason it turned out the way it did is from a lot of studio interference. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I will always argue, like I argue with Rise of Skywalker, that a great director should be able to take a bad situation and still make good art out of it. Now, that being said,
this is better than that.
This is better than Rise of Skywalker. I think that where I have issues with Raimi in this movie is I don't know who in their right mind watched this whole emo Spider-Man sequence, or emo Peter Parker sequence, I guess, and thought, wow, this is good cinema right here.
I have no idea. I feel like the studio interference with Sony and Raimi. I feel like Sam Raimi had the movie that he wanted to make in mind and went to Sony and was like, "I want to make this," and they were like, "We need some other stuff." And he was like, "I don't really know." And by the time he got around to filming it, he's like, "Okay, they might have done 1 or 2 drafts on the script and be like, good enough. It's whatever.
Yeah, I feel like he probably had it already mostly written out.
He probably had the majority of his original script written for the movie that he wanted to make, and then Sony was like, you gotta put Venom in it, and he was like, really?
Really?
And so he went back and basically rewrote, I would assume, most of his movie to include different things to add Venom into it.
I think especially the second half. Because,
that second act, for sure. Like, I mean, he had to, like, completely... I would assume, to set up the Venom character, he had to completely write a new second act for his movie. I mean, because the entire second act deals with Spider-Man getting, like, the symbiote attached to him, and, you know, the whole 40 minutes of him being, you know, emo Peter Parker. And
yeah, you know, I think, you know, this is a 2 hour and 20-minute movie. It's long. It's about, I don't know, it's about 15 minutes longer than the other ones.
Roughly, yeah.
The first hour, Venom, the symbiote is just kind of crawling around in the background every once in a while. It's very much a non-character.
Yeah.
You know, then we spend the first hour setting up, you know, where all of our pre-established characters are, plus Sandman and all that. And, you know, I think it's still a little jumbled, a little crammed. You know, I think there's a couple of forced action sequences. We had this first action sequence where Peter and Harry get into it, which, wow, you know, watching it now, it looks kind of rough.
Oh, the effects in this movie do not hold up very well.
No.
To its credit, the CGI on the people, especially toward the end when they're falling, you know, that scene where Peter's falling through the sky or whatever, it looks about as good as Bloodshot.
Yeah, if that's crediting, maybe, I guess, you know, there you go.
And Bloodshot just came out this year, so.
My comparison is always for movies around this time frame. This same exact year as Transformers.
2007. Yeah.
Transformers looks really good today still.
And it didn't have quite as big a budget. It had around, I think, a $200
Well, yeah, but they
didn't
didn't have near the actor salary.
No, they didn't have the actor salary. But you'd figure for between almost between 300 almost 300 and $350 million, they could have done a little bit better with effects. But it seems like Sam Raimi and his entire creative team were probably like, by the time they got done filming this movie, they were like, F it, bro.
Whatever.
Just get it out there.
I feel like they probably were rushed to get this out. And, you know, but yeah, so anyway, we have this first action sequence. But, you know, this first act, I'm enjoying it. I'm going along with it. The action sequences are fine if you can kind of forget the bad CGI. But yeah, what the most infamous part of this movie, like you were talking about, is the second act, and you know, I think we said around the hour 5 mark.
Yeah, around the hour 5 mark, the symbiote crawls on him and bonds with him.
You know, I mean, if you're looking at total actual screen time, he's only emo Peter Parker for about
10 minutes,
15, 20 minutes of the movie. But oh my god, it is the most cringiest.
See, the scenes where he's Black Suit Spider-Man, some of them are kind of cringy. Like, there's a couple cringy lines here or there, but
good riddance.
And he says later chump to Eddie at one point before he hops down a drain. But like, other than that, I mean, the Black Suit Spider-Man stuff is not horrible. No. It's just when he's emo Peter Parker that's god awful.
Yeah.
But looking back on it now, I mean, it's so god awful that it's funny.
That's my thing.
Enjoyable.
What is the difference between this and other bad superhero movies is that when this movie is bad, it's so bad it's good.
It's awesome.
The hair flip, like his whole hair, like the way he just like pushes his hair down in his forehead over his forehead is just hilarious. And then he has a hair flip at one point, and then the whole scene in the jazz thing where he like rips his suit off, and then it pans over to Bryce Dallas Howard, and her hair blows back. And I'm like, what is this? This is a Looney Tunes movie. And
then he starts doing the snap, and he starts, I don't even know what he's doing.
What does he say? Now
dig on this.
Yeah, oh my god, it's hilarious. I mean, I don't know if it's unintentional or not. I mean, it doesn't mix with the rest of the movie. Like, I mean,
it doesn't fit the tone.
We talked about how these have been, comic booky. But yeah, I mean, the tone is way off. But it's funny, though. I mean, I'm laughing the whole time.
It's incredible.
It doesn't make for good. That doesn't mean the movie's good.
And then he goes up and he starts having this conversation with MJ. He's like, hey. She's like, what's your problem? You. Yeah. And this manager walks up, and this other bouncer dude, everything okay here, Paul? Yeah, everything okay here, Paul.
It's amazing, yeah. And then what does he do with the apartment landlord? He's like,
it became a meme. He's like, rent? He's like, give me rent. He's like, you'll get your rent when you fix this damn door.
I feel like that was just
that became a pretty solid meme for a while.
I feel like that was just Tobey Maguire just venting his frustration about the whole movie. But anyway, but yeah, so the second act is rough.
It's rough.
I mean, it's funny, but it's rough. Like as a piece of filmmaking, it's rough.
It's
and this is where I'm like, why was this like revenge on Sony? Was this Raimi's revenge on Sony?
I think this is the point where he was like fed up with Sony trying to interfere, and he was just like, F it, bro. I'm just gonna. He's like,
we're just going.
We got 2 drafts in. You know, we worked out some minor bugs here or there, but you know, it's whatever. Just put it out there.
And
it's like the first ideas that they came up with to do, and they kind of reworked it a little bit to make sure it kind of flowed, and then they were like, good enough, roll with it.
And you know, I was talking about, I was actually enjoying Sandman as a villain, but he, you know, after he gets washed away in the sewer,
he disappears throughout almost that entire second.
He disappears for a solid, I want to say a solid 30 or 4 minutes we go without seeing him at all. And then he's kind of like just kind of forced back into this third act. But getting into the third act, so we had the scene, you know, obviously it's pretty infamous where he goes to the church bell tower.
And then Eddie becomes Venom.
Well, we haven't talked about Topher Grace. Topher Grace.
What happened to him?
Yeah. My issue with him, my first issue with him is that, you know, in the comics, and like they did with Venom when they when they brought on Tom Hardy, Eddie Brock's always like this kind of big hulking presence is intimidating, you know. But they went a different route with this movie. That for some reason they hired Topher Grace, so he's like this kind of slimy, sleazy, almost nerdy in a Peter Parker way, a little bit guy, but just kind of like Peter Parker gone bad. He just doesn't work as the villain for me.
Topher Grace, I think, was... I don't know if he was just trying to escape the shadow of him being on that 70s show for so long.
Well, this is a long time after that, though.
That 70s show didn't end until like the mid-2000s.
Did it not?
No, it didn't end until like 2005 or something like that, I think. It was on for a while. It ended in the early 2000s sometime, early to mid-zeros, but it's like I feel like he was just like trying to escape his image of being in that show for so long, and he took this role and it did not work.
It just doesn't work. And then once he gets
his line delivery is just so off.
Yeah,
most of the movie.
It just, I don't know. And
like some of the things he says, I'm like, why are you saying that like that?
And I'm like, you know, never really established that he's a religious man, but he goes to this church and he's like, I want you to kill Peter Parker. I'm like,
well, you know, okay. He had that whole scene with Peter where he shoves him into the picture. He said, "You want forgiveness? Find religion." He found religion.
Oh yeah, I guess they set it up. You know, there you go.
He found religion.
He found religion. But yeah, and you know the Venom drifts on him, which is about, I think we said about an hour 45 into this movie, where what I would consider the main villain is actually introduced.
Yeah, he comes in like an hour 45. He finally turns into Venom,
and that's where you can tell like there's too many villains for this movie to focus on. We got 3 major villains.
The fact that it took us almost 3/4 of the duration of this movie to introduce what's supposed to be, I guess, the main villain, the one that Sony was so worried about having in this movie, is it shows how overcrowded it is.
And I think, you know, if you want to have Venom in this movie, I mean, I know this is not what the studio was thinking, but I think you could have had Black Suit Spider-Man in this movie, and then at the end of the movie, or around the end of the movie, he'd break free, and then you kind of set Venom up
for the fourth movie.
But yeah, having them all this happen in the same movie, plus have Sandman over here and Harry over here, it's just too much going on. But you know, it is what it is, I guess. But anyway, so we get into this big final blowout.
It starts at about an hour 50, hour 55.
It's about the last 25 minutes or so of the movie if you take out credits, I guess. Yeah. You know, it's fine. It's a finely staged action sequence.
It's not horrible.
I guess before that we had the scene, you know, where he goes back to ask Harry for help.
Yeah.
And you know they get into we missed the part where he was emo Spider-Man and he fought in an incredible
fought him
sequence.
And then blew up his face.
And then scarred his face, and then he goes and asks for help, and then we have a scene that a lot of people have talked about that's really problematic, where the butler
between Bernard and Harry, there are a lot of problems and plot holes this creates. Like, okay, so first off, he says, you know, why didn't he have this conversation with him, like, I don't know, 6 months earlier when he was, you know, complaining about and, you know, being really, really obsessed with,
or the night that it happened,
like, hey,
the night that
just
it happened,
so you know, like, you know, he walked up to him, you know, hey, your father, he killed himself.
Why was he... okay, first of all, why was he cleaning his wounds? Why didn't they call, like, the ambulance? Why... How did he know that those blades those blade.
Like, did he know he was Green
From his
Goblin? Like, how long did he know he was
glider,
Green
yeah.
Goblin? If he knew, and if he did before, while he was Green Goblin during the duration of the first movie, why did he never say anything?
How
to
dedicated of a butler is he? And
raises a lot of questions.
But anyway, so it happens because they got to be friends again, whatever. So then, yeah, we had this big 4-way fight at the end. It's fine. I mean,
it has its moments.
It's just like the other two. A lot of Kirsten Dunst screaming at the top of her lungs.
It has some tense moments with Tobey Maguire being held down, around his neck and being bashed by Sandman.
I do think it has some good emotional highs. Like when he first pulls his old suit out, and I neglected to talk about Danny Elfman in the last two movies. Danny Elfman's score for these movies are amazing.
Yeah.
Now, what was the guy's name?
Christopher Young.
I think obviously when it's at its best when they're recycling Danny Elfman.
Definitely.
I think the rest of the movie he does a decent job of imitating Danny Elfman.
I like his Sandman theme is not bad.
Yeah.
And the kind of black suit, Venom symbiote Spider-Man theme or whatever is not bad, but it's okay.
Yeah.
The rest of the movie he really is just kind of trying to imitate Danny Elfman as best as he can.
But yeah, so I don't know. The fight's fine, and at one point Green Goblin shows up and he takes down Sandman.
And
without
then they
too much
team
trouble.
up
And then, but yeah, of course you had the big emotional moment where he steps in front of. You get it like from the first movie. He steps in front of the glider and the blades get him like his father.
Yeah.
But then
he said he would die for his friends because he loved them that much. He did.
Yeah, he did.
And then we have the one of the final scenes of the movie with Peter and Mary Jane and Harry all there, our main trio, and then he's dying, and he's like, "You're my friend." He's like,
"You're my best friend."
Did you just wink?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, I always thought he had better chemistry with Harry than he ever did with Kirsten Dunst. But anyway, and he dies, and it's real sad. And then, like on the first one, the movie ends at a funeral.
At a funeral. Well, I guess it's a scene before the actual final scene.
Whatever.
So they go to Harry's funeral. A couple questions like why is
the police
Stacy
captain
and her dad there? Him and Flash, I didn't realize were friends. Flash is there.
How did they get all these actors in the first movie back for cameos? They got Willem Dafoe back. They got the guy that played, the robber from the first movie.
Cliff Robertson back. I don't know
why. Whatever.
And then the final scene of the movie, Peter goes to the jazz club where MJ works, and she's up on the stage singing some song about how she's never gonna love anybody again because she loves Peter Parker, but she can't.
She just can't. Yeah, they were planning on filming a 4 and 5 back to back for a long time. I read, and then they just finally all said screw it.
They opted to reboot, but
we'll get to the reboots eventually.
Maybe
before the
one
next
day.
Spider-Man movie comes out, we'll get to all of them. But now let's wrap up this trilogy. I guess before we get into final thoughts, do you want to do the plug?
Yeah, we can plug ourselves. If you want to follow us on our social medias, we like I said last week, we rebranded a little bit, so now we're DNA Film Reviews. Makes us easier to find everywhere, especially on social medias and on YouTube. So DNA Film Reviews on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Make sure you give us a like or follow. Be sure to tell your friends about us. Other than that, if you like hearing us talk, we do have a podcast. If Aaron wants to tell you about it.
Yeah, we have a podcast that releases a new episode every Tuesday about giant monster movies, usually on Tuesday, and usually about giant monster movies. It's called Stomp This Way. It's on any major pod hosting or pod catching service.
Accurate.
But other than that, you ready to get into Buy It, Stream It, Skip It?
I guess I'll let you start this time.
All right. So, we talked about this movie. I think it still has good moments. I think anytime Rosemary Harris is on screen, I still think she's great. I think anytime Thomas Hayden Church is on screen, I think this movie's pretty good. Him actually on screen, not some CGI recreation. And I think that, aside from some funny, angry-looking faces, I think that James Franco is still doing a pretty good job. And Tobey Maguire, he's still geeky as always. I still don't really care for Kirsten Dunst. She's really whiny in this movie.
She's kind of bitchy, too.
Kind of bitchy. Sorry. And I don't like Topher Grace, as we talked about. J.K. Simmons, he's not really given much to do, but he's still great when he's in it.
Definitely.
And then, Bryce Dallas Howard is just kind of ditzy, whatever. But not a big enough part of the movie to really worry about it. But, I still think the action, some bad CGI aside, is pretty good. I still like the score for this movie, especially when they're recycling Danny Elfman themes. But I think the difference between this movie, like I've said, and a lot of other bad movies is that when this movie goes bad, it just goes all the way. It's funny bad, and I know a lot of fans hold a grudge against this movie for that second act, but I can look at it now and laugh at it, especially after some of the Spider-Man movies we've had since. But no, I think if you were to take all superhero movies ever made and like break them into top half, bottom half, I still think this is easily in the top half. I think if you're looking for a movie to sit down with the family, a superhero movie that you haven't seen in a while or haven't watched, and you're just looking to want to stream for the family for the night, you can find this on Netflix, and I still think it's a pretty good time. It definitely doesn't hold a candle to his first two films. Yeah, it's that emo sequence in the middle is just really off the wall and totally out of step with the rest of the movie. And yeah, the effects are pretty rough sometimes, but yeah, I'm gonna say it's still worth a stream. I mean, you don't have to buy it and rewatch it regularly like you do the first two, but stream it, and I think it's still an entertaining enough superhero experience.
Yeah.
How about you?
I would say stream it as well. It has its moments. I think that first act is a pretty decent setup, and I kind of like the direction that we're trying to take Harry. Trying to close out his whole character arc that he's been dealing with the death of his father, and then in the first movie, and then finding out that his best friend is Spider-Man in the second movie, and everything going on there. I think the setup for Sandman is really good, and I wish that Sony would not have interfered and let him make the movie that he wanted to, but it's close to.
Sony's footing the bill.
Well, it's fair. Close to. It's 15 years later, almost.
Almost 13.
13. 2021 will be 14 years.
Yeah.
So 13 years. 13 years.
20 minus 7.
20 minus 7 is. But I mean, I guess 13 is getting close to 15. It's getting up there in age, but I mean, we're that far in the future now. I mean,
we're 13 years and 5 Spider-Man movies removed from it, or
5 Spider-Man movies
crazy
since,
like that,
or almost like 5 Spider-Man movies if you count Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It has its moments. It has some really bad moments too. That second act is pretty rough.
Yeah.
Especially when. We have Tobey Maguire trying to be emo, which that's just not him. I can't buy him. And there's some rough moments between him and Kirsten Dunst. That scene on the bridge, I don't buy that either one of them is upset at all.
I don't buy that this bridge has no one else walking across it in midday.
It's Central Park, midday.
On a nice summer or fall day, whatever it is.
I don't even know, but
I don't even think they know what season it is, but whatever.
But I don't know. It's just there's some really rough parts about this movie, but when it is bad, like you said, it's funny. I mean, it's so cringy and hilarious just to see him walk into a clothing store and come out wearing an all black suit with his hair swooped down and just start dancing, and then
hair flip,
and then he goes on a date with Gwen Stacy to this jazz club, and he just starts playing the piano and dancing around the whole restaurant and acting like an idiot. Oh, it's incredible.
It's incredible.
But the action holds up pretty well. I think for the most part, most of the action scenes they're still really entertaining and engaging. Bad effects aside, I just wish that the story was better this time around. It definitely does not hold up like the other two films with the story and the way the characters are written, especially the way the villains are written, and
it's just too crowded.
It's so crowded. It just doesn't quite hold up. But I mean, overall, it's not horrible. When I was a kid, I thought it was pretty awesome. There's
plenty of action.
I thought it was pretty awesome and entertaining when I was a kid. Looking back now, I mean, I know it's bad, but it still has moments that make it enjoyable to watch. And if you like the first two, you'll find some sort of enjoyment out of this one. So definitely worth the stream if you got nothing better to do on Friday night or whatever.
Yeah.
Or in this case, a Wednesday night at 6:50.
Yeah, whatever. But anyway, I guess that concludes the trilogy. I would ask us to rank them, but I think it's pretty obvious we both have 2, 1, 3.
2, 1, 3.
2, 1, 3. Yeah. So anyway, but what do we got coming up next?
I think the next movie that we're gonna review is Bill and Ted. Correct?
That's right.
And then we'll do the second one of those.
Yeah. Then we'll continue our Christopher Nolan series with The Dark Knight Rises. Speaking of superhero movies,
finishing off the Dark Knight trilogy, another kind of lower point for a great trilogy of movies.
Yeah, and then I think we're gonna do the Kingsman movies and some other stuff. But
Some other stuff. We
so
got
like,
some stuff coming up. I'm gonna try to convince Aaron to help me film a collection video in the next few days, or something like that. I got about 400 or so movies sitting in this room, so it'll be a long video if we do it, but it'll be all right.
yeah, we could break it up. We could come over to my house and film one day, and then film at your house, and we can just
We could
collide it into all one
collide
giant
it into
video.
one giant, like 2-hour long video.
Yeah,
But
that nobody will watch.
keep a lookout for that. I'm gonna try to convince Aaron to help me with that. Other than that, I guess
But anyway, I think we've taken up enough of your time.
definitely.
Like we said at the beginning, or in the middle, don't forget to follow our social media accounts.
Absolutely.
And definitely don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it. We'll catch you guys in the next video.
See you later.